living at, and it has served me very well throughout the years. Now I've become older, I've begun to almost enjoy it.
But you must have started to believe that you could act a bit when you made The Lost Weekend.
Well, that made me sit down and take notice. I finally realized that I did have some talent toward acting, and after that I began to watch.
Well, you were saying about the research you did in the Bellevue Hospital in New York.
Well, I didn't know what these people were like, so I got myself committed to this psychiatric ward, and where they brought them in the worst, the last legs. And I got a bed near the door about 8 o'clock at night, dressed in the hospital pajamas. And I kept watching and listening, and pretty soon all these poor dipsomaniacs would start screaming. And one man at the end of the room insisted that his bed was on fire. And he was strapped into the bed, and he kept screaming and pleading, let him out of these straps, because his bed was in fires, all in flames, because he was in the depths of DT. And as he kept screaming, others started picking it up, and they all began. It was just horrifying.
Get the restraints and get the doctor.
And that's no exaggeration, all that noise. That's exactly what it was like.
No, not at all. Used to come in and give them a glass of something before they were due to go to sleep. It was a mixture of formaldehyde, paraldehyde. He said, "Want to taste?" So I tasted it. Oof, I'd rather be drunk, you know. Just horrible.
Well, at least the film had a happy ending for you, because you won the Oscar in 1946.
Yes, I did.
And you must then have felt that you were an actor.
I then began to feel that I was accepted by my colleagues as one of them, because you're only voted on by actors and directors, and I was accepted.
I like, too, the story of how you celebrated that night when you, on your way to the celebration dinner, and you stopped off.
Yeah, well, don't go into that. Let somebody read the book. And I think it's a very wonderful thing, but that actually happened. I went right back to that same spot that I was in the first night I was in Hollywood, and looked at these lights. When this man told me, he says, "Isn't it too bad it all belongs to Ramon Navarro?" So what do you mean? He said, "Well, he's the reigning star of Hollywood right now, and all this is his." So the night I won the Oscar, I told the driver to drive me right back to that same spot. I got out of the car, and I said, "Tonight is mine."
Lovely. The film that most people will remember you by most vividly recently was Love Story, in which I think for the first time you appeared without a toupee, if I may be so indelicate as to mention such a subject.
Why is it indelicate?
Well, I don't know. I just wondered if you
I put it on today because of the lights.
Ah. Well, what caused you to make the decision to leave the toupee off?
Because I hated wearing it. I thought this is
reason.
a perfect example of an opportunity arising whereby I can legally and sensibly leave it off. You're much more comfortable, you don't feel anchored, you are yourself. And who am I trying to fool anyway?
Well, it worked out extraordinarily well, didn't it?
Yes, I read the thing and I thought, well, it'd be a nice little picture. My wife read it, she cried all the way through the script. So I thought, well, this can be rather good. But none of us ever expected it would be the blockbuster it did. I think it made $90 million.
I hope you had a percentage of that.
So do I.
Well, let's have a look at a moment of that with you and Ryan O'Neal, who plays your son.
You haven't mentioned Jennifer.
What's there to say? You're presenting us with a fait accompli, are you not?
But what did you think?
I think she's absolutely charming. And I think for a girl from her background to get all the way to Radcliffe is...
Get to the point.
The point doesn't concern the young lady, it concerns you. Your rebellion. And you are rebelling, Oliver.
I failed? fail to see how marrying a beautiful and brilliant Radcliffe girl constitutes rebellion. I mean, she's not some crazy hippie.
She's not many things.
What irks you most, Father, that she's Catholic or that she's poor?
What attracts you most?
I'm leaving.
Don't go off half-cocked, damn it. I would only ask that you wait a bit.
Define bit.
Finished law school. If this thing is real, it'll stand the test of time.
It is real, but I don't see why I have to put it to some arbitrary test.
Because I'm asking you.
You're commanding me.
Oliver, if you marry her now, I'll not give you the time of day.
Father, you don't know the time of day.
Well, between 1929 and then, I think you swapped your hair for the ability to act.
Thanks a lot.
You've said that you enjoy acting. Now, is that because you can now play your age, that you can play with or without a toupee as you choose? You don't have to
No, I
pretend to be
almost
younger?
enjoy acting when I do it, but I enjoy watching good acting. It's actually quite thrilling, I think, to see good, wonderful performances.
One final point. You say quite often in your book that you are nostalgic and full of nostalgia. What exactly are you nostalgic for?
Well, I said it in the book. I'm not nostalgic for a place anymore. I'm nostalgic for a time of morality, good taste, elegance, kindness. Things that I remember existed when I was a young boy. And I'm very much afraid they don't exist now to any great extent. It seems to be less and less thought of.
Mr. Menand, I hate to end on such a sad note, but alas, we have come to the end of our time. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, it's not my place to plug books, but I would most strongly recommend you to read Wide-Eyed in Babylon. And incidentally, later this month, the NFT is showing The Lost Weekend and another film of the 40s in which Mr. Menand stars, The Ministry of Fear. He can also be seen very soon in the new Disney production Escape to Witch Mountain, in which he plays a rich and powerful man with the customary rich and powerful man's weakness of craving to increase his richness and power. Well, next week I'll be taking a look at the latest Buñuel picture, The Phantom of Liberté, and talking to Michael Caine and Sidney Poitier about their roles in the Wilby conspiracy. For now, though, here's a final glimpse of Ain't Misbehavin', Elsie Carlyle singing My Canary's Got Circles Under His Eyes. And in case anybody's wondering, I didn't get the circles under my eyes the same way the canary got his. Good night.
All this world is up to date. Even children stay up late. Things are not just what they used to be. All this world is off its nut, going crazy, nothing but. Just get this earful from me. Since making whoopee became all the rage, it's even got to the old bird cage. My canary has circles under his eyes. He used to whistle the prisoner's song. Now he does snake hips the whole night long. My poor canary has circles under his eyes. Now there was a time he was satisfied to flit among the flowers. But now when I let him out, he'll hide up in a tree for hours. Instead of taking a much-needed rest, he's flying out to some sparrow's nest. My canary has circles under his eyes.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
You want to know what it's really like? Fantastic.
satin on my shoulder and a smile on my lips. Money in my pocket, right at my fingertips. Wrap it up and charge it, that's my favorite phrase. How lucky when I see the chauffeur, think I'll give him a raise. How lucky, life's a bed of roses, swirling perfume on me. You can spare me the blues, I don't sing in that key. And if there's a man who'd leave me, I am happy to say I haven't run into him yet.
Good evening. Barbara Streisand being ever so ironic, actually, in the royal film Funny Lady, which the Queen saw this very evening. And good luck to Her Majesty. It's a sequel, of course, to Funny Girl, and takes up the story of Fanny Brice after her career as a leading lady of the Ziegfeld Follies, and about the time during the American Depression when she met and later married the master showman Billy Rose. In a sense, it's the traditional showbiz story that Hollywood loves so dearly. Ups and downs, triumphs and disasters, loves and lovers lost and found. James Caan, who obviously has it written into his contract that no film may be made in Hollywood without him, plays Billy Rose, and the picture comes to us from America on a huge wave of enthusiasm, both for itself and its stars. But is all that enthusiasm justified? Well, the short answer, and come to that the long answer too, is no. It's a glossy and shallow picture that runs for 2 hours and 20 minutes and tells us very little about Fanny Brice.
I'll run back to the top of the link and then I'll read you.
Hey. That's one up to the gallery.
15 love.
15 love, yes.
Can you put Catherine back up, please? Thank you. Fine. Yep. He says, wish you luck.
Oh, thanks.
Still running. Stand by for cue.
Good evening. Barbara Streisand being ever so ironic, actually, in the royal film Funny Lady, which the Queen saw this very evening, and good luck to Her Majesty. It's a sequel, of course, to Funny Girl, and takes up the story of Fanny Brice after her career as a leading lady of the Ziegfeld Follies, and about the time during the American Depression when she met and later married the master showman Billy Rose. It's the traditional showbiz story that Hollywood loves so dearly. Ups and downs, triumphs and disasters, loves and lovers lost and found. James Caan, who obviously has it written into his contract that no film may be made in Hollywood without a leading role for him, plays Billy Rose, and the picture comes to us from America on a huge wave of enthusiasm, both for itself and its stars. But is all that enthusiasm justified? Well, the short answer, and come to that the long answer too, is no. It's a glossy and shallow picture that runs for 2 hours and 20 minutes, and tells us very little about Fanny Brice, except that she was terribly successful and apparently greeted every fresh crisis in her life with an indifferent wisecrack. Miss Streisand can be, and indeed is, a funny lady, but she needs a better script than this, and also lighter direction than Herbert Ross can provide. The many talents of Mr. Caan are virtually wasted, since he vanishes from the action for what seems like hours at a time. If I were asked to rank Funny Lady among the royal films of the last 3 years, I'd put it above Lost Horizon in 1973, which is no kind of praise at all, but from the point of sheer entertainment, a long way behind The Three Musketeers last year. Anyway, let's see Streisand and Caan indulging in argument and horseplay.
You're not getting the best out of the 4 sheets. What you want is something you can see on an outhouse wall 200 yards from the highway going 60 miles an hour on a foggy night, you know? Yellow and black and no fine print. All that matters is can they see it, can they read it, can they remember it? Yellow and black and plain. You got it?
Got it.
Good. You're such a slob. You know, why do you drop your pistachio shells all over the theater? The theater is a temple of art. I gave you some good advice, kid. Now, just I hope you got it.
I got it. When I got you, I got it all.
Oh, what, are you crazy?
What, nobody can touch a star? Huh?
Stop that. I don't like being handled.
Is that right?
That's right.
Is that right?
Stop it! Do it! Oh, I am sorry. I really am. I'm so sorry. Billy, please. Can I help you brush your coat off? I just grabbed the first thing. Billy, I just grabbed the first thing that I grabbed the first thing. Could I please?
I'm solemnly assured that Mr. Kahn's riposte with the box of powder was quite spontaneous and unexpected by Miss Streisand. An utterly boring piece of information, but I thought I'd pass it on anyway. So we now come to another musical, At Long Last Love, directed by the Hollywood wunderkind Peter Bogdanovich. People have been expecting him to come a cropper ever since his first huge success with The Last Picture Show, and this time, I'm sorry to say, he has. At Long Last Love is inspired, like all Bogdanovich's films, by other people's films. It's an attempt to recreate a frothy 1930s musical and leans heavily on memories of the Lubitsch comedies, The Philadelphia Story and High Society. It looks beautiful, it has words and music by Cole Porter, and the only things wrong with it are a lumpish script, uninspired direction, very odd casting, and the fact that none of the leading players can sing. Sybil Shepherd, who is very pretty but has no particular flair for comedy, plays the heroine in a slender tale of girl meets millionaire, loses millionaire, and so on. And the hero, a role that's down on its knees begging to be played by someone like Cary Grant, is played instead by Burt Reynolds, a man who positively exudes menace. He looks less like a playboy millionaire than a bouncer in a nightclub. And whenever he shuffles towards Miss Shepherd, you think, oh good, he's really going to thump her this time. But he never does, which is a pity in a way. What's more, Frank Sinatra he ain't, as you'll detect from the following duet.
Clear, so if you wanna go walking, dear, it's delightful, it's delicious, it's lovely. I understand the reason why you're sentimental, 'cause so am I.
Are we?
It's delightful, it's delicious, it's lovely.
You can tell at a glance what a swell night this is for romance. You can hear dear Mother Nature murmuring low. Let yourself go. Squeeze loose, my chickadee. And when I kiss you, just say to me,
It's delightful,
it's delicious,
it's delectable,
it's delirious,
it's the lemon,
it's the limit,
it's the looks, it's the lovely.
Don't call us, Mr. Reynolds, we'll call you. And now, as I promised last week, Gene Wilder. Do you remember him as the Waco Kid in that glorious spoof, Blazing Saddles?
Heard of me before, but I used to be called the Waco Kid.
The Waco Kid. He had the fastest hands in the West.
In the world.
Well, if you're the kid, then show me something.
Oh, well, maybe a couple of years ago I could have shown you something, but today, look at that.
Steady as a rock.
Yeah, but I shoot with this hand.
See, I knew you wasn't no Waco Kid. You was just pulling my lariat.
Oh, dearie dear. Well, okay. See that king?
Yeah.
Put your hands on both sides of it. Now, when I say go, you try to grab it first.
Man, that's no contest. You're a mile away.
Yeah. Anyway, when you hear the word go, you just try to grab it. Ready?
Ready.
Go.
Hey.
You looking for this?
Well, now Gene Wilder and director Mel Brooks have got together again to make Young Frankenstein, a superb and hilarious pastiche of James Whale's original Frankenstein movie of the late 30s. Mr. Wilder plays Baron Frankenstein's grandson, who takes up the model-making business where the old man left off. Peter Boyle is the monster, and Marty Feldman is Igor, Frankenstein's mad assistant. You may recall that Gene Wilder played the ill-fated undertaker in Bonnie and Clyde, and the accountant in Mel Brooks's first picture, The Producers. Well, he's in London now, preparing to direct a film of his own, and I talked to him about his association with Brooks. But before we go into that interview, let's see him at work for another director, Woody Allen, in Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex.
Doctor, Mr. Milos brought in his sheep.
She's here? All right, show her in. Thank you. You can go. Hi. Darling. I know this must all seem very strange to you. You from the hills of Armenia and me from Jackson Heights, and yet I think it could work if we gave it a chance. I had just finished doing the film, acting in the film Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex. And I was in the country in West Hampton, New York, feeling a little bit melancholy, wondering if I would ever work again, and in what. And I excused myself one afternoon, and I went upstairs and took a long yellow legal pad and a black felt pen, and I started to doodle, and I wrote down on the top of the page, Young Frankenstein. And then for an hour and 20 minutes, I remember it was exactly an hour and 20 minutes, I answered the question, what would happen to me if I inherited the old Frankenstein estate in 1975? What could happen to me? And I put it away. I had about 2.5, 3 pages, and I put it in a drawer. 6 months later, my California agent called up and said, how about a picture, you, Peter Boyle, and Marty Feldman? I said, sounds terrific. Why do you happen to mention the three of us? And he said, because I represent you and Peter and Marty. So I said, well, since you have such a wonderful artistic base for starting a film, it's fine with me, because I happen to respect Peter Boyle and Marty Feldman very much. And I didn't think I'd ever hear from him again. And a week later, he called up and he said, it looks very good, that picture with you and Peter and Marty. I said, fine, that's good. Keep in touch. 4 days later, he called, he said, it's hot. That picture is hot. I said, what picture are you talking about? You keep saying that picture, but there is no picture. He said, well, you fellas will all write something. You're all writers. And I said, well, I don't write that way. I sit alone in a room with a large yellow legal pad and a black felt pen, and I write. I said, but I did write something about 6 months ago that might be right for us. He said, what is it? I said, well, it's called Young Frankenstein, but I don't want to explain it on the phone. I'll send it to you. He said, all right, send it off right away, and maybe we can get Mel Brooks to direct it. I said, you're talking through your hat, because Mel won't direct anything that he hasn't written, and I know him too well to ask a favor. I'll ask a favor of a friend, but not an artistic favor. So I sent it off, and 2 days later, I got a call from Mel saying, what are you getting me into?
What was it like working with him? You seem to be a fairly calm man, and he's not.
I am very calm.
I'm very calm.
Well, that's the I suppose it's the most interesting part and the most difficult to explain about the relationship with Mel. We're very different people, and yet we get along. I get along with him as well as I think anyone I've ever known. Maybe it's because we're so different. He's a Jewish what do you call it? Borscht Belt comic. You know, there's an area in New York that's called the Borscht Belt. It means that there's lots of resorts, and people go there for 2 weeks in the summer, and they always have stand-up comics. He started doing that at 14 years old, and he was on all the time. He could never go to a party without being on and entertaining and forcing you to listen. This was before I knew him. You know, people say now that compared to then, he's so much calmer. I mean, it sounds like a joke. I'm not making a joke. I mean it sincerely. The choices would be altogether different. The choices that I would make as an actor. But the process of working would be the same. It's like reaching a point of no return. Once you begin working, thinking in a certain way, you can't switch it off. I don't suddenly do comedy sketches. I would work on the part of Leo Bloom in The Producers, or the Waco Kid in Blazing Saddles, or Dr. Frankenstein in Young Frankenstein, the same way that I would if I was doing Julius Caesar or Hamlet or Death of a Salesman. But it's just that I would know that I was doing a comedy, and I would try for funny choices. But the process of creating a logic, creating a character, having real thoughts, reacting spontaneously to the other actor, not having worked it out in my bedroom the night before, but taking from what goes on with the other actor on the set, so that I don't really know how the scene will be. I know what the scene means. I know what the events are that take place. I know perhaps what physical actions I'm going to perform, but then there are surprises.
Need a hand?
No thanks. Have one. Thanks very much all the same.
Just a moment, sir. I know everyone in this neighborhood, but I've never seen your face before. Can you account for yourself?
Yes, I am Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, newly arrived from America.
Oh, yes, sir. I was told you were here. Well, I'm Constable Henry, sir. Pleased to meet you.
How very nice to meet you, Constable.
Why, you're chilled to the bone, sir. A nice warm fire would be the thing for you.
Yes,
and a little nip from the old bottle wouldn't be too bad either, would it, sir?
Let's take it. Yes.
Well, if you have everything in hand, sir, I'll say good night.
Thank you very much, Constable.
At your service, sir. Always.
Good night, Constable.
Good night, sir.
When we got to work on the second draft, we had, with a great deal of love, we had differences of opinion. And I felt it was a conception I had for the picture, and I wanted a certain kind of picture, and he wanted that kind of picture. But his natural instinct is to go from joke to joke to joke. He was aware of it, and he wanted me to, he said it was my job to make him less broad, but it was his job to make me less subtle. So when we would reach a confrontation, a loving confrontation, I would say, I don't want Blazing Frankenstein. And he would say, I don't want a magnificent jewel that's going to play in an art house and 14 people are going to see. And nor did I. So, you know, by the third draft, we were just about on the same track. And on the fourth track, we were in the same train on the same track.
Nothing.
No, Doctor, I'm sorry.
No. Be of good cheer. If science teaches us anything, it teaches us to accept our failures as well as our successes with quiet dignity and grace. Son of a bitch bastard, I'll get you for this! What did you do to me? What did you do to me?
Stop it! You kill him!
I don't want to live! I do not want
Mel
to
Brooks
live!
has said of you that you're a vulnerable everyman, that God said, let there be prey, and he created rabbits, pigeons, lambs, and Gene Wilder.
Ha, ha, ha.
It's a lovely remark.
It is lovely, I know. He thinks that I'm the classic victim. You know, the one who, if ever there's someone who is a perfect mark, a victim, the prey for the world, for all the evil people in the world to set upon, that it's me. I suppose that's true. It certainly was true in the producers.
That's it, baby, when you got it, flaunt it, flaunt it!
Cough.
Cough! I assume you're making those cartoon noises to attract my attention. Am I correct in my assumption, you fish-faced enemy of the people? Oh, I hurt your feelings. Good. What is it?
May I speak to you for a minute?
Go. You have 58 seconds.
Well, in glancing at your books, I noticed that in the columns
You
marked...
have 48 seconds left. Hurry, hurry.
Oh, I glanced at your books, I noticed in the...
28 seconds. You're running out of time.
Mr. Bialystok, I cannot function under these conditions. You make me extremely nervous.
What is that, a handkerchief?
Nothing, that's nothing.
If it's nothing, why can't I see?
My blanket, my blue blanket, give me my blue blanket. I'm sorry. I don't like people touching my blue blanket. It's not important. It's a minor compulsion. I can deal with it if I want to. It's just that I've had it ever since I was a baby, and I find it very comforting.
I think he feels very strongly about that character, Leo Bloom. And even when I'm playing a different kind of character, I think what he means, what he feels very strongly is a sense of innocence, a little naivete. And that's true, I am a little naive. I'm not as naive as he thinks I am, but I'm naive.
But there's also a certain melancholy about a lot of the characters you play, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's
But that's part of your character.
In part of Gene Wilder's character, yes, yes. I was asked that, to talk about that once a while ago, and I said something that surprised me because I hadn't thought it out so clearly, but my mother was semi-invalid, and growing up, we spent most of our time, my sister and my father and I, trying to make her laugh. And we succeeded. But there was always a very sad base underneath it, because we knew that it was a very fragile situation. And, you know, the doctor would say that if she would get too excited, it was her heart. And if she would get too excited, then anything could happen. So we were always mindful of that, but still spent 80% of the time being funny, 20% of the time feeling a little sad about it. And I think that's the way it's ended up with the work, with me. I like to spend 80% of my time being funny, you know, but I always like, well, whether I like it or not, it's there. I feel that undercurrent of, the seriousness of life and a little melancholy underneath.
Well, you're obviously moving away from just straight acting, because in this next film, you're The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother. You're writing it, starring in it, and I believe directing.
I am.
Well, that sounds a lot.
Oh, that sounds terrifying. Well, I couldn't get Mel to direct it.
Did you try?
I tried as I was writing it, and he said he didn't want to work on something that wasn't his conception anymore. It was very difficult for him. He said, I'll help you every day. You can call me day or night, but he said, I think you'd better go off on your own now, and we'll meet together afterwards. I'll do my things and you'll do yours, and then we'll meet and do something together.
Well, quite simply, Young Frankenstein is marvellously funny. It looks exactly right, all misty and mysterious. The script is fast and witty, the direction is crisp and inventive, and with one exception, and I bear the film such goodwill that I won't even say who that exception is, the performances are splendidly judged. What's more, there's one scene in particular between the monster and Gene Hackman as the blind man whom he visits, which I shall treasure for a very long time. Well, next week, next Tuesday night, that is, I'll be looking at, among other things, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And so till then, sorry.
The piano's not very good today either.
No, it isn't, is it? No. It's one of those days.
Yeah, that's right. Stand by.
Ready to go, are we?
Are we? Going in about 5 seconds. Shot 34, retake 1.
Well, quite simply, Young Frankenstein is marvellously funny. It looks exactly right, all misty and mysterious. The script is fast and witty, the direction is crisp and inventive, and with one exception, and I bear the film such goodwill that I won't even say who that exception is, the performances are splendidly judged. What's more, there's one scene in particular between the monster and Gene Hackman as a blind man whom he visits, which I shall treasure for a very long time. Next week, next Tuesday night, that is, I'll be looking at, among other things, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So until then, good night.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Well, as you can see, I'm not quite myself this evening. Indeed, I'm still positively recuperating from a week at the Rude Film Festival, where a huge entry, if that's the word, and often it was, of rude films kept an enthusiastic audience on the edge of each other's seats. And if any of those films hit your local cinema, I can promise you there's enough fun and games to keep the Festival of Light foaming at the Fritillaries for a fortnight. Well, later on, I'm going to be taking a look around the BBC Club to see if there's anything worth taking to the cinema. But meanwhile, let's turn our attention to a new film intriguingly entitled Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is an EMI Wombat film and which, I'm reliably assured, traces the entire history of Western philosophy from St Thomas Aquinas to Bob Monkhouse. It's a potty film about a quest for a pot, in this case the Holy Grail, which, if you didn't know it, is a sort of FA Cup for Christians, much sought after by teams of chivalrous knights, not all of whom were in the First Division, if you see what I mean. And you might in a moment, when Mr Neil Innes minstrels to a not quite so brave Sir Robin, played by someone whose name mercifully escapes me.
Bravely bold Sir Robin rode forth from Camelot. He was not afraid to die, oh brave Sir Robin. He was not at all afraid to be killed in nasty ways. Brave, 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 brave Sir Robin. He was not in the least bit scared to be mashed into a pulp, or to have his eyes gouged out and his elbows broken, to have his kneecap split and his body burned away, and his limbs all hacked and mangled, brave Sir Robin. His head smashed in and his heart cut out and his liver removed and his bowels unplugged and his nostrils raped and his bottom burnt off and his penis...
That's enough music for now, lads. Looks like there's dirty work afoot.
And our oath, St. Nicholas, is a way of preserving freedom.
Oh, Dennis, forget about freedom. No, not that mud.
Halt! Who are you? He is brave Sir Robin, brave Sir Robin.
Shut up! Nobody really. Just passing through.
What do you want? To fight and...
Shut up! Nothing really. Just to pass through. Good tonight.
I'm afraid not.
Ah. Well, actually, I am a Knight of the Round Table.
You're a Knight of the Round Table?
I am.
In that case, I shall have to kill you. Shall I? Oh, I don't think so. What do I think? I think kill it. Oh, let's be nice to him. Oh, shut up.
Well, apart from the acting, the film isn't half bad. Indeed, it's half good, and the other half's magnificent. It's crisp, inventive, full of wunderkind, schadenfreude, schmaltz, mittelschmerz, angst, déjà vu, and there's even some jokes, which is just as well as it's a comedy. It's set, as you might guess, and you'd be right if you did guess that it was so set, in Arthurian times, and it might loosely be described as dirty knights at the round table. But it's not just a blue film. Far from it. There's reds and greens and purples and even a bit of orange, which gets eaten towards the end. It's been directed by a director called Terry Jones and Terry Gilliam. An unusual name, and indeed it's an unusual film, with its medieval setting, its storyline, and its staunchly British attitudes that make Pier Paolo Pasolini look like a wop director. The film stars, for want of a better word, and there is a better word, but we're not allowed to use it, John Cleese making his first major film appearance since Last Tango in Redditch, Michael Palin, as he's wrongly called, appearing as Michael Palin, Graham Chapman as a rather butch King Arthur with his own beard, and there's an utterly bewitching performance by Eric Idle as the young Philip Jenkinson. It is, as I've indicated, a British film, which means that they're all underpaid. It looks very pretty. There's castles and battles and blood and even some real ladies. And mercifully, and quite surprisingly for Monty Python, none of it's been seen on television before. Monty Python and the Holy Grail has an AA rating, but you can get in if you belong to the RAC. In point of fact, the film has an A rating, but that rather spoiled the joke. Still, enough of all this pontificating. I urge you all to see it at once. Meanwhile, here's a scene redolent with poignancy in which our heroes discover a witch.
What makes you think she's a witch? Oh, she turned me into a newt. A newt?
We got better.
Burn her anyway! There are ways of telling whether she is a witch.
Hello? What are they? Tell us!
Tell me, what do you do with witches?
Burn them up!
And what do you burn apart from witches?
More witches!
Wood. So, why do witches burn?
Because they're made of wood.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
So, how do we tell whether she is made of wood?
Build a bridge out of her.
Ah, but can you not also make bridges out of stone?
Oh, yeah.
Does a wood sink in water?
No.
No, it floats.
It floats. Throw her into the pool.
What also floats in water?
Bread.
Apples.
Very small rocks.
Cider. A great gravy. Cherries. Mud.
Churches.
Lead.
A duck. Exactly.
Well, that was Monty Python and the Holy Grail, a film which I think it's only fair to say is considerably funnier than King Lear, Death of a Salesman, and Oedipus Rex all put together. And that brings us to another comedy group, The Four Musketeers. This is a sequel to last year's royal film, The Three Musketeers, and none of the participants looks a day older now than then, which is not at all surprising when you recall that both pictures were made at the same time. And indeed, there was a period when the entire cast thought it was simply making one incredibly long film. Still, that was finally sorted out and they all got paid in the end. The Four Musketeers is the story of Milady's revenge on D'Artagnan and company for foiling her earlier plot concerning the Queen of France's pearls. It's all kind of complicated and colourful and irreverent, though not quite so inventive as its predecessor. And there are times when the Musketeers look, well, not quite like Monty Python perhaps, but certainly like the goodies. Michael York plays D'Artagnan, and Frank Finlay, Oliver Reed and Richard Chamberlain are the Musketeers. The likes of Charlton Heston, Christopher Lee and Geraldine Chaplin crop up in supporting roles. Raquel Welch, two of the finest supporting roles in the business, appears, alas, only briefly, which is certainly to be deplored from a visual point of view, if not perhaps from an artistic one.
Look, are they not beautiful?
Besides you, Constance, my dear, they look old and wrinkled.
I think you'll find them very tasty, very sweet.
Oh, melon.
Great clumsy cow. Who's going to pay for them? Very handy, isn't it?
D'Artagnan? D'Artagnan! Oh, D'Artagnan!
Away with her.
Stand up and fight, you coward!
Richard Lester directs it all with much zest, and as usual, the fight scenes, as you'll have gathered, are played largely for laughs.
That one. And that one.
Get you!
Don't worry, I'm coming.
Rosebud is a most peculiar thriller directed by Otto Preminger and starring Peter O'Toole as a highly improbable CIA agent. Robert Mitchum was originally due to play this part, but he made an excuse and left, and thereby proved himself wiser than he knew. The premise is that the 5 teenage daughters of 5 immensely wealthy industrialists are kidnapped and held to ransom by the Palestine Liberation Army. And Mr. O'Toole is entrusted the task of rescuing them, a task of which he makes extremely heavy weather when you consider how easy it all turns out to be in the end. I'm not quite sure what point Mr. Preminger is trying to make, unless it's to make amends to Israel for Exodus, at the premiere of which, you may recall, Mort Sahl stood up and called to Mr. Preminger, "Let my people go." Anyway, I won't bother you with details of the plot, save to inform you that the leader of the Palestine Liberation Army turns out to be our own Mr. Richard Attenborough. And at one stage, a heavily disguised Mr. O'Toole makes a perilous journey to interview him at his headquarters. I can't really think why he bothered, because as we can now see, the Palestinians knew who he was all the time. And anyway, what Mr. O'Toole finally had to say could as easily have been said on a postcard.
Almara, Anna Majut. Michrae, Achelit Tifshal.
Why don't you remove your makeup, Martin? It must be quite uncomfortable.
Ah. Yes, it is rather. Thank you. What was all that about?
Sit down. You mean the execution?
The curious execution. The boy could have killed you instead of himself.
He was one of my best men.
And why is he dead?
Because he survived a suicide mission.
That doesn't make sense.
When one of my men go on such a mission, he's dead. He's ready for it and he expects it. That's the way it must be if I'm to win. I cannot afford survivors. Hatil Kahui. Lord Airport taught me that.
And that's the last time that fella messes up a suicide mission. Well, the great Waldo Pepper has Robert Redford as a flyer who, denied glory in the First World War, seeks it as a stunt flyer at country fairs in America in the 1920s. What he regrets most of all is that he was never able to engage the great German ace Ernst Kessler in single combat. And so to make up for that, he goes about pretending that he did, until he ends up in Hollywood and finds that he and Kessler have to recreate the Germans' most famous dogfight for a movie. It's a romantic and nostalgic picture, well directed by George Roy Hill and nicely played by Robert Redford. But, and the loss may well be mine alone, I found that it never really engaged my full attention, still less my wholehearted sympathy. However, let's have a look at Daredevil Redford wing-walking during his barnstorming days with the aerial circus. Well, since I've cleverly introduced the subject of nostalgia, perhaps now would be an opportune moment to remind you that this is the last in the present series of Film 75. The programme began long before my time as Film 71 and has been going on more or less without a break ever since. I've enjoyed it a great deal and I can only hope that you have too. Still, since we are going off the air, it seems appropriate tonight both to look back and to look forward, and the Hollywood Oscar nominations provide an excellent excuse. So now let's have a quick rundown of the films that seem to have the best chance of copping a few trophies. Chinatown appears to be firmly at the head of that list since it's been nominated for Best Actor, Actress, Original Screenplay, Photography, Sound, Art Direction, Original Dramatic Score, Director and Best Film. It's a beautifully constructed Chandler-esque thriller set in the 1930s. The actor is Jack Nicholson, the actress Faye Dunaway, and the director Roman Polanski. In this scene, Nicholson, as the private eye, tells his client how he sees the case so far.
Oh, no, I have my own car. The Packard.
Wait a minute, Sonny. I think you better come with me.
But why? There's nothing more to say. Will you get my car, please?
Okay, go home. But in case you're interested, your husband was murdered. Somebody's been dumping thousands of tons of water from the city's reservoirs, and we're supposed to be in the middle of a drought. He found out about it, and he was killed. There's a waterlogged drunk in the morgue, involuntary manslaughter if anybody wants to take the trouble, which they don't. It seems like half the city is trying to cover it all up, which is fine by me. But Mrs. Mulray, I goddamn near lost my nose, and I like it. I like breathing through it. And I still think that you're hiding something.
Chinatown, of course, has played here with great success, and so too has The Towering Inferno, the story of a fire in the world's tallest building, and probably the best of the current crop of Hollywood's disaster movies. No doubt deservedly, it's picked up 6 Oscar nominations, including one for Best Film and another for Best Supporting Actor. And the actor is a very interesting and sentimental choice indeed, Fred Astaire, who plays an aging, down-at-heel, but essentially good-hearted confidence trickster.
You must miss your villa.
Well, yes and no. It gets rather dull in the south of France. It really does. I mean, nothing but swimming, and yachting, and partying, and all that sort of thing. And believe it or not, they fight over the few eligible bachelors. Even such old scraps as I.
No false humility, please.
Shall we? I decided to come back to the reality of San Francisco to regain my perspective and my humility and spend more time at the one thing in this world that I'm really good at, the stock market.
Monte Carlo's loss is San Francisco's gain.
Thank you. Do you believe in destiny?
I believe in all good things.
There must be a reason for my coming back home. Meeting you.
In case you're wondering, the lady with the old hoofer was Jennifer Jones. Well, now let's look at a film which hasn't been seen here yet, but is heavily tipped to carry off an Oscar or two. Lenny also has 6 nominations for Best Film, Actor, Actress, and so on. It's a story based on the life of Lenny Bruce, that sad, brilliant, tormented and drug-addicted comedian who was persecuted unto death in America only a few years ago for making the kind of remarks about the obscenity of violence and the smutty-mindedness of self-appointed guardians of morality that are now part of the basic routine of any humorist commentating on the social scene. Dustin Hoffman plays Lenny and Valerie Perrine, his wife. In this clip, Bruce, by now broke and very ill, is arrested on stage on a charge of obscenity for the umpteenth and last time.
There's an obscenity circus that's been going on for about 4 years, man. It's like a 3-ring circus, starring the district attorney, the lower court, and the Supreme Court. And I'm like some schmuck who fell off a high wire right in the middle of it, and it's killing me. Can you turn the sound up, please? The people can't hear me. Just give me some more sound. Thanks. Okay, now, where was I? Chicago bus guilty. That case is now being appealed in the Illinois Supreme Court, citing the case of the Daylight Book Company versus Summerhill, U.S. 268. No, wait a minute. U.S. 652. That's not... Oh, come on, man. Where are you going? These are the jokes. What is it? You want a bit? No, I don't want to do tits and ass. I can't do... All right, you want to know where it's really at with tits? I'll tell you. You see that chick over there? She has beautiful tits, but there is no way we could take a picture of those tits and put them in the newspaper because that's obscene. That's offensive. All right. But I'll tell you what's offensive to me. The only pictures that you do see of tits in the newspapers are all pictures of tits that have been shot up, maimed, burned. It's really weird. Oh, come on, what's happening?
Ladies and gentlemen, this man's under arrest.
What, again?
Well, Lenny is certainly a piece of special pleading, heavily biased in favour of the late Mr. Bruce and against the many people who screwed him. But it's just as certainly a film to watch out for. And so, by all accounts, is Harry and Tonto. I've not seen this yet, but it won a Best Actor nomination for Art Carney, as a New York widower who, bored with being mugged in Manhattan, sets off on a journey around America with his cat, Tonto.
What does one do about urinating? There's a John in the back. Thank you, Dom. I didn't think so. Excuse me.
Sorry, you can't talk to the driver while watching the motion.
My cat has to relieve himself.
You're not supposed to have any animals on a vehicle.
But this is an animal, and he's on this vehicle, and he has to go.
How did you get that cat in this bus?
I carried him on in his case. What difference does it make?
Well, I'll let him take a pee in his case.
He doesn't want to pee in his case. His litter is soiled.
A cat is a very clean animal. He doesn't like to mate where another animal is made.
I can't stop this bus, mister.
Listen, driver, you better stop this bus or my cat is going to do his business on somebody's leg.
Well, as you may have noticed, British names don't figure too largely on this year's list, but thanks to Murder on the Orient Express, it is possible to strike a muffled jingoistic note, because nominations have gone to Albert Finney for Best Actor in the role of Hercule Poirot, to Geoffrey Unsworth for his photography, to Tony Walton for the costumes, to Richard Rodney Bennett for his music, and to Paul Dane for the script. Well, at this point, I should come out boldly and tell you who I think the winner will be, but I'm not such a fool, on account of the fact that I haven't seen all the entries. I will say, though, that I shan't complain a bit if the voting goes in favour of Chinatown and Jack Nicholson. However, one of the pictures nominated for Best Foreign Film is Louis Malle's Lacombe Lucien, the story of a French collaborator in the last war, which won the British SFTA award last month. And as I said a moment ago, Murder on the Orient Express is just about the only British picture to receive even a nod of recognition. Well, as good luck would have it, we spoke to Louis Malle and to Sidney Lumet, the director of Orient Express, last year. Louis Malle referred to the controversy which had greeted his film when it was first shown.
The controversy about the French being heroes or the French being traitors or the behavior of the French during the occupation, I think, is a side aspect of the film. What's interesting is what's in the film itself. I mean, the characters, and the characters are just unique characters, and they have to do with everybody. I don't think it, you know, it relates to the period, but it relates to the period in a sort of a, it could happen any other time. You know, that's what a foreign audience, I think, is much more able to find out about the film.
Dis-le-moi. Tu sais que la curiosité, c'est un vilain défaut.
Qui c'est celui-là? Je l'ai trouvé dans le jardin, il espionnait.
C'est pas vrai? Je faisais rien. Je rentre à l'hospice. Tu sais pas que c'est interdit de se promener en ville après 10 heures? Est-ce que tu vas me regarder? Vous êtes pas Henri Aubert, le coureur cycliste? Tu m'as vu courir, petit? Oui, au Grand Prix de Caussade, en 39. J'étais avec mon père. Vous avez gagné. Tu me rappelles, hein? T'es dans la ville? Non, de Soleillac. Attends, je connais du monde de Soleillac. L'épicière. Comment elle s'appelle? Madame Cavesu. C'est ça, Madame Cavesu. Une brune?
Va boire un verre? Marie, 2 Suzes. Alors comme ça, tu viens de Soleillac?
Vous connaissez?
C'est beau par là, c'est sauvage, hein? Il y a du maquis dans le coin.
Vous savez, ça montre pas beaucoup.
The point was that I felt we were dealing with 3 affectionate memories. First, the very affectionate memory, which I've got too, and I know a lot of people have, about the train movies. A lot of people think this movie was done before. It's never been done before. What they're thinking of is Shanghai Express with Dietrich, Sambul Express, Lady Vanishes, Stranger on a Train. The whole thing of the mystery, the whodunit, taking place on a train is really such a delicious old movie form, and you look back at those things with great pleasure, or at least I do. So that was one myth, for example, that we were fighting. The second thing was the train freaks, of whom I happen to be one. People who love the sound and love traveling on them. And I mean, nights in the Wagon Lit have been among the greatest in my life. And the sound of them and steam engines in general. And so that was another thing, romantic thing about it. The third element is Miss Christie herself. There are just such lovely, glowing memories I've had, and millions of readers have had, of murder of Roger Ackroyd and ABC murders and so on and so forth. But the memory, obviously, has just grown and grown and grown. That the only way to do it would be to make it, as far as I could see, something enormously gay, enormously exciting, and enormously glamorous.
It is, I think, ironic that Britain's only nominated feature film should have been directed by an American. It's also rather ominous that American producers and directors presently resident in London, men like Stanley Kubrick, Norman Jewison, Joe Losey and Fred Zinnemann, must now be at least thinking of fleeing the land in the face of proposed new tax regulations. Bearing in mind that they're among the very few people in this country who can raise the money to make a picture, one wonders what on earth will happen to the British film industry if they go. Well, I suppose we've always got Ken Russell, and indeed Ken Russell is about to unveil his latest musical extravaganza, Tommy, which is based on the rock opera composed by The Who. I found it noisy and pretentious, but Mr. Russell no doubt sees it otherwise. Here, in any event, is his own compilation of moments to treasure. Good evening. One way or another, it's been a pretty starry week in the cinema, the stars coming out shining with varying degrees of lustre, some looking very bright indeed, and others lighting up the screen like a 5-watt bulb. Well, for example, there's Robert Redford in very good form in a spy thriller called 3 Days of the Condor, and Clint Eastwood emoting like the proverbial cigar store Indian in another spy thriller, The Eiger Sanction. In addition, we have Telly Savalas in something pretty daft called Inside Out, and there's Burt Reynolds in a slice of country and western whimsy entitled W.W. and the Dixie Dance Kings. Goodness, what riches. And so far, I haven't even mentioned an absolute boon to light music lovers, That's Entertainment, one of the bigger box office successes of last year, and now back in the West End. One of the stars you saw there was, of course, Ann Miller, and you can't have failed to notice her because a girl with legs like that is never going to pass unnoticed anywhere. And I'm delighted to say that Miss Miller is our guest tonight, and I'll be talking to her later on. But let's begin with Robert Redford and 3 Days of the Condor. Redford plays a minor employee of the CIA, codename Condor, whose job is to read thrillers and the like in the hope of uncovering secret codes and discovering new ideas for dirty tricks that his employers might borrow. A bit improbable, you may feel. But after all, this is the CIA we're talking about. However, one day, as he returns to his office...
Back at the beginning of that link, please.
Yes.
Tiny weeny puppies.
Yes, yes. I said uncovering instead of uncovering. Sorry, sorry. One of the stars you saw there was, of course, Ann Miller. You can't have failed to notice her because a girl with legs like that is never going to pass unnoticed anywhere. And I'm delighted to say that Miss Miller is our guest tonight, and I'll be talking to her later on. But let's begin with Robert Redford and 3 Days of the Condor. Redford plays a minor employee of the CIA, codename... Who did? Oh, good. I'm glad it was him and not me. One each.
15 all.
One of the stars you saw there was, of course, Ann Miller. You can't have failed to notice her because a girl with legs like that is never going to pass unnoticed anywhere. And I'm delighted to say that Miss Miller is our guest tonight, and I'll be talking to her later on. But let's begin with Robert Redford and 3 Days of the Condor. Redford plays a minor employee of the CIA, codename Condor, whose job is to read thrillers and the like in the hope of uncovering secret codes and discovering new ideas for dirty tricks that his employers might borrow. A bit improbable, you may feel, but after all, this is the CIA we're talking about. However, one day, as he returns to his office after lunch, Condor discovers that something rather dreadful has happened.
Little breakdown of the security there. Well, what are you doing?
Well, as you'll have gathered, all his colleagues have been comprehensively hit. And what transpires after this is that Redford has inadvertently stumbled upon a dangerous, not to say lunatic, spy ring operating within the CIA itself, and consequently he becomes a marked man. Max von Sydow, a hired assassin, is after him, and even his employers don't trust him. And among those employers are Cliff Robertson and John Houseman, giving his now familiar and impeccable impersonation of John Houseman. So the plot involves Redford trying to keep alive and also trying to work out what's going on and who can be responsible for the tricky predicament in which he finds himself. It's all remarkably opaque and highly enjoyable nevertheless. Sidney Pollack directs with speed and a keen eye for tension, And every now and then the dialogue throws up the kind of polished line that reminds you wistfully of the days when the likes of Raymond Chandler and William Faulkner were writing scripts in Hollywood. To a large extent, of course, the film's appeal depends on its stars, and I suppose there's hardly anyone around these days with more appeal than Redford. Faye Dunaway is the girl in the piece, a photographer who offers our hero refuge at gunpoint. She tends to vanish towards the end of the film, fading away, you might say. But while she's around, she gives the proceedings a welcome touch of class. Here she is with Redford in her flat, listening with understandable scepticism as he explains the plot so far.
I told you I had a friend. 15 and a half, 34. I dig 15 and a half, 34s. What size are you?
What are you, a clown?
I'm scared.
So am I.
What are you scared for? You've got the gun.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not enough. Listen, I work for the CIA. I am not a spy. I just read books. We read everything that's published in the world. And we feed the plots, dirty tricks, codes into a computer, and the computer checks against actual CIA plans and operations. I look for leaks, I look for new ideas. We read adventures and novels and journals. Who'd invent a job like that? Listen. People are trying to kill me. Who? I don't know, but there's a reason. There is a reason. And I just need some safe, quiet time to pull things together.
Here.
Here.
It's only fair.
Incidentally, just to prove that the cinema isn't always inflationary, 3 Days of the Condor is adapted from a novel called 6 Days of the Condor. I dare say they're saving the other 3 days for a sequel. But now another spy thriller, which is going on general release shortly, Clint Eastwood in The Eiger Sanction. This too involves the CIA, and what a boon that frightful organisation is to all creators of fiction. Eastwood is a professional assassin who, in between undertaking sanctions, which means killing people, for the CIA, is an art lecturer who uses his blood money to buy old masters. His sanction this time is to kill an enemy assassin who is somehow involved in an assault on the north face of the Eiger Mountain. Well, naturally, he has to get into shape for this, and so he goes off for training in Monument Valley in Utah with his old friend George Kennedy. At this point, you may be wondering where you've seen that particular scenery before. Well, the answer is that you saw it in a host of John Ford westerns. Ford always said that Monument Valley was more than just a place to him, it was a state of mind. And he used it first, and perhaps most vividly, as a backdrop to the even more rugged features of John Wayne in Stagecoach. Remember? Well, so much for Monument Valley. Clint Eastwood is also the director of The Eiger Sanction. It's the fourth film he's directed, the others being Play Misty for Me, Breezy, in which he didn't appear, and High Plains Drifter, which no doubt shows how far he's come since all those spaghetti westerns in the mid-1960s. While the present film was in production, we watched director Eastwood at work in Zurich.
Irvin? Yeah? On action, say, you know, I like it rid of the tag and get rid of the tag. So then just talk about that. Yeah. Okay. Roll, please.
Ready? Charlie, 28. Right, take one. See.
Marker. Okay, Erwin, okay. Here. Look over there where he is.
Well, it makes it a little more difficult. The reason I did it in this case is because the film, I didn't know any directors who were mountain climbers, and I had to go learn the sport of climbing, and so I figured this would be an ideal one to do both jobs in. I've done it in 3 other films before, or 2 other films before I've directed and acted in, so I'm kind of somewhat used to it, though it isn't the most ideal situation under normal circumstances.
Then move it over to you. There'll be no shot there. Bang. and then hit, then throw it. Okay. So I'll fire the one shot right here. You have to be out of there, you guys, because it'll be dangerous.
Have you a message in your films, or do you film?
Well, sometimes there's a
entertainment?
message, but always on it would always be a subliminal part of the film. I would prefer to say no. I would prefer to say I'd rather entertain.
Well, the thing about Clint Eastwood, the actor, is that he's the physical embodiment of Action Man. Archetypal Eastwood is seen at his best in High Plains Drifter, in which he rides into town and kills 3 men almost before he's got off his horse. When he's fighting, killing, climbing and hauling young women in and out of bed, his limbs fall into positively lifelike poses. But unfortunately, he carries this similarity to Action Man even into the dialogue scenes. Eastwood delivering a laconic line or trying to show some deep emotion is as believable as Action Man moving spontaneously into a soft shoe shuffle. Not that that matters to it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, there's a shadow right on the screen there. There was a shadow came right over the writing and I couldn't read the word. Never mind, it's my fault, yeah.
Right, the thing about Clint Eastwood, right? Is that where I've gone back to, I mean?
It's 2-1 to the gallery at the moment.
What?
2-1 to the gallery at the moment.
30-15.
The thing about Clint Eastwood, the actor, is that he's the physical embodiment of Action Man. Archetypal Eastwood is seen at his best in High Plains Drifter, in which he rides into town and kills 3 men and rapes the local whore almost before he's got off his horse. When he's fighting, killing, climbing and hauling young women in and out of bed, his limbs fall into positively lifelike poses. But unfortunately, he carries this similarity to Action Man even into the dialogue scenes. Eastwood delivering a laconic line or trying to show some deep emotion is as believable as Action Man moving spontaneously into a soft shoe shuffle. Not that any of this matters too much in the Eiger sanction, because it's a pretty silly film anyway. The photography and the climbing scenes are quite spectacular, but Eastwood, the director, is no more successful at injecting tension or surprise into the story than is Eastwood, the actor, at putting life into the character he plays. One interesting point, though, and it's also detectable in 3 Days of the Condor, is the new morality that's creeping into contemporary spy thrillers. Apparently it's all right to work for the CIA and even to kill people, so long as you have utter contempt for your employers. Patriotism is suspect naturally, but the main thing is that contempt and... Oh, shit. I am sorry.
All right, then. Don't worry. Was there something across the screen then? Or was it
No, I said content instead of contempt. No, it's my fault entirely.
All right, then. Where do we go from? No! 39. One interesting point, though. Right.
One interesting point, though, and this is also detectable in 3 Days of the Condor, is the new morality that's creeping into contemporary spy thrillers. Apparently it's all right to work for the CIA and even to kill people, so long as you have utter contempt for your employers. Patriotism is suspect naturally, but the main thing is that contempt and cynicism excuse all. However, we've seen our hero training for his mountain climb, so now let's see how he makes out with an international climbing team, any one of whom may be a killer, on the Eiger itself. Just as well, the British Everest team did rather better than that. But now let's move on to the latest oeuvre of Mr. Burt Reynolds, W.W. and the Dixie Dance Kings, a film whose misfortune it is to be shown only a week after Robert Altman's superb picture Nashville. Reynolds appears first as the character W.W., playing a latter-day Robin Hood, robbing petrol stations in Georgia and giving part of the proceeds back to the attendant on the principle that the two of them need the money more than the oil company does. An interesting philosophical point when you think of the profits oil companies make, and were indeed making in the 1950s, the period in which the film is set. Well, later on, Reynolds becomes involved with a singer called Dixie, played by Connie Van Dyke, and a group called the Dixie Dance Kings, and is trapped by his own boasting into taking them to Nashville and trying to convert them into country and western stars. Enter at this point Art Carney as Deacon, a private detective and lay preacher employed by the oil company to bring old W.W. to justice, a task in which he's somewhat hampered by the fact that his conscience won't allow him to arrest anybody on Sunday. The consequent melange of pursuit of fame by Dixie and the group and pursuit of W.W. by the Deacon is usually quite agreeable and sometimes amusing, though by no means as hilarious as it might have been. An odd film, really, and I'm not at all sure what, if anything, it's trying to say. But certainly its portrait of Nashville is pretty inconsequential when you compare it with Robert Altman's picture. Still, here's W.W. with the group on their first night in Nashville, playing at Rosie's New Talent Club.
Evening.
Them yours up there?
Am I?
Who they gonna imitate?
And we're awful proud to be here.
You name them, I can do it.
We're the Dixie Dance Kings. This is Poor Little Dixie here, and we're the Dance Kings. We come from Valdosta, Georgia. All except for Junior back here on the drum. And he's strictly from hunger.
Hey, don't y'all leave now. These kids are really helping.
We don't get up to Nashville. How
about that kid, huh? Full of humility, isn't he?
Can you hear me back there? Now, everybody knows that Rosie's Nashville Corral is the home away from home of all the big country and western stars. Now that these kids have made it and are big stars, they've come all the way from Las Vegas to say thank you to Rosie. So let's give a big Rosie's Nashville Corral welcome to Dixie and the Dixie Dance Kings. Whoa!
Hey, plug like that goes for one on the house.
What's blast? What do you think of them?
I'd say it's more Valdosta, Georgia than Vegas up there.
You think they got anything going for them?
Best thing they got going for them is you, Cutie Pie. That combination of horse manure and sincerity like you got made a lot of rich people in this town.
You know, she's right.
W.W. and the Dixie Dance Kings is on now in the West End. And at this point we come to Telly Savalas, no stranger to the cinema. Before he cropped up as Kojak, he'd made 24 feature films, and of those, the best known was perhaps the Bond picture On Her Majesty's Secret Service, in which he played the heavy. But now, still looking incredibly like Kojak, though cruelly stripped of his lollipop, he can be seen in an utterly silly epic purporting to be a comedy thriller called Inside Out. In this, he's a con man fallen on hard times, who's recruited, along with Robert Culp, a retired jewel thief, to help a former German POW camp commandant to recover a long-lost fortune in gold bullion. The German is played by James Mason with an authentic Hollywood German accent. Poor Mr. Mason is called upon to adopt so many accents these days that I fear he must almost have forgotten what English sounds like. Well, part of the plot involves Savalas and Culp dressing up as American officers to break into a maximum security prison and abduct the only prisoner, a Rudolf Hess character who's the one man who knows where the gold is. So here's a scene early on where they have difficulty in adding a Berlin businessman to their list of recruits.
What is it? What's wrong with this guy, anyway?
Overeating has caused him to collapse. Notice the skin tone and his breathing pattern.
Well, what do you think it means?
He's addicted to food the way others are to drink or drugs.
You better believe it. I mean, a couple of more feasts, he's headed for that big delicatessen in the sky. Here we go. Flop, flop, flop. And Sly, would you do me a favor? Yeah. Would you kind of take care of him? I gotta call my wife. You know, if I don't check in with her every night, she kind of worries about me. Well, what would you suggest we do when he wakes up? Huh? Oh, here. Throw him a banana every half hour. Oh, our friend Herr Udo Blimperman. He owns a theatrical costume house.
Uniforms?
All kinds. Beautiful. Please, no applause.
So that neatly solves the problem of disguise, and from then on, absurdity piles upon absurdity, happy coincidence marches on the heels of happy coincidence, and acting on the deplorable assumption that everyone in the entire world is corruptible, the motley crew goes about its preposterous business. The script lacks both imagination and wit, the performances are perfunctory, and one's left wondering why men who presumably don't need the money should involve themselves in such tripe. No doubt the whole thing was concocted to cash in on Mr. Savalas's television fame. But the message I have for him is simply this. If you want to know who loves your telly baby, I've got to say that many more movies like this, and you'll find that nobody loves your baby. However, let's pick up the plot at the point where the Rudolf Hess person has been abducted, and Mr. Savalas and colleagues put on a charade designed to make him reveal the whereabouts of the gold. The man giving a passable imitation of the lunatic Hitler is Gunther Meisner.
What gold?
You, one of the most trusted members of the party.
What is happening? I do not understand.
You do not understand.
I must swear you to secrecy. Shh. No one must ever know. Huh? Oh.
Keep talking, Schmidt. Hans! I want to know where the gold is.
Gold? What gold?
That gold that was to be delivered to the Reichsbank from Schmargendorf.
That was so many years ago.
Are you insane? That gold shipment disappeared 7 days ago. You signed the order. Where's the gold? Where have you hidden the gold, Holtz?
I cannot think. I beg you to excuse me, my Führer. My head. I cannot think.
Well, my Führer, if you will permit him a few moments to collect his thoughts. Very well. Take him out into the other room.
Mein Führer. Ah, beautiful.
Inside Out is one of several new pictures in the West End this week, some good and some decidedly not so good. But the other big event of the week has been the return of That's Entertainment, a sort of glorified clip show that included more than 100 songs from 60 MGM musicals made between 1929 and 1958. It was an exercise in unashamed nostalgia, each clip being introduced quite uncritically by one of 11 venerable old-timers like Fred Astaire, Frank Sinatra, Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds. The film ran for 6 months at the Dominion Cinema to remarkably good business. For me, seeing it all the way through was an experience akin to trying to make an entire meal of chocolate eclairs. But even so, there was much in it that was splendid, and one of the most splendid sections showed Ann Miller in 1953.
Gotta hear that beat, I gotta hear those drums, and even when it comes to romance, when I feel that I might fall, I always go and play it smart, till I hear that beat, I gotta hear that beat, that certain beat in my heart.
Ann Miller, the best tap dancing lady on the lot. Annie's talents and Busby Berkeley's imaginative direction were a perfect combination in Small Town Girl.
Well, to say they don't make musicals like that anymore is simply to repeat a rather sad truth. On a much happier note, however, I'm delighted to say that Ann Miller is in the studio with me now.
Do you want the chair in for this? No.
No.
But you're presumably looking at it, aren't you?
Well, I imagine, yes, yes. Sorry, well, we're going straight on because I thought she was going to be with me. She's not, presumably.
No.
Oh, I see. I beg your pardon.
Just in case she isn't there.
Okay, fine. All right.
Sorry, Barry. I didn't
Okay.
understand either.
And that brings us to the end of this week's programme. We'll be back next Friday with a batch of films on general release, like Wild Party, starring Raquel Welch, Mel Brooks's The 12 Chairs, and That Lucky Touch, which stars Lee J. Cobb. Also a report from Booker Airfield near Oxford, where Malcolm McDowell, Christopher Plummer and Simon Ward are filming Aces High. But until then, let's have another look at Ann Miller in Hit the Deck from That's Entertainment. Good night. The consequent melange of Pursuit of Fame by Dixie and the Group and Pursuit of W.W. by the Deacon is usually quite agreeable and sometimes amusing, though by no means as hilarious as it might have been. An odd film, really, and I'm not at all sure what, if anything, it's trying to say. But certainly its portrait of Nashville is pretty inconsequential when you compare it with Robert Altman's picture. Still, here's W.W. with the group on their first night in Nashville, playing at Rosie's new talent club.
Evening.
Them yours up there?
Am I?
Who they gonna imitate?
And we're awful proud to be here.
You name them, they can do it.
We're the Dixie Dance Kings. This is Pretty Little Dixie here, and we're the Dance Kings. We come from Valdosta, Georgia. All except for Junior back here on the drum. And he's strictly from hunger.
Hey, don't you all leave now. These kids are really happy.
We don't get up to Nashville. How about that kid, huh? Full of humility, isn't he? Can you hear me back there? Now, everybody knows that Rosie's Nashville Corral is the home away from home of all the big country and western stars. Now that these kids have made it and are big stars, they've come all the way from Las Vegas to say thank you to Rosie. So let's give a big Rosie's Nashville Corral welcome to Dixie and the Dixie Dance Kings. Whoa!
Hey, plug like that goes for one on the house.
What's blast? What do you think of them?
I'd say it's more Valdosta, Georgia than Vegas up there.
You think they got anything going for them?
Best thing they got going for them is you, Cutie Pie. That combination of horse manure and sincerity like you got made a lot of rich people in this town.
You know, she's right.
On there. Like any minute now.
I was going to get really done up for you today. I was going to wear a long dress. And no, because all my brassieres are gone. You know, those strapless ones that are cut low. And I was going to wear a pretty dress, you know, but they're all gone. So, thank you. Thank you. You're sweet. Thank you.
That is a shame. But I'm sure, well, somebody's obviously making a great fuss on you.
Gotta hear that beat, I gotta hear those drums, and even when it comes to romance, when I feel that I might fall, I always go and play it smart, till I hear that beat, I gotta hear that beat, that certain beat in my heart.
Ann Miller, the best tap dancing lady on the lots. Annie's talents and Busby Berkeley's imaginative direction were a perfect combination in Small Town Girl.
Well, to say they don't make musicals like that anymore is simply to repeat a rather sad truth. On a much happier note, however, I'm delighted to say that Ann Miller is in the studio with me now. And welcome to you, Ann Miller.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's just great being in London. I'm very thrilled about it.
Well, that was a great routine we saw on there. Does it have any special happy memories for you?
Well, yes, it does, because Busby Berkeley was the dance director, and he arranged everything, and it's the last thing he did before he retired, and so that has very happy memories for me. And it's also a great honor because now Busby Berkeley is so revered by everybody, and all these books about him in the States. I don't know where it's like that over here, but just everybody's making such a big thing about it. I'm just so thrilled that I was the last one to have worked with him before he retired.
Well, that was pretty nearly your last film too, wasn't it? Because you retired at a ridiculously early age. Now, why did you do that?
Well, I got married, but the marriage didn't really work out, and then I went back into a career, and then I got married again, and that didn't work out, back into a career, and then I got married again, that was annulled, and back into a career, and the only thing that's really never let me down is my career, and I've always had a marvelous time doing something, either television, which I'm doing now in the States, or on Broadway or stage, which I love to do, and now I'm on tour with That's Entertainment for Metro-Goldwyn Mayer.